University of Houston in Houston, Texas, and Houston is the fourth largest city in the United States. Not that many people around the world have heard of Houston, but they've heard of Dallas in Texas because everybody remembers or wants to know who shot JR. That was a big television show about Texas 25 years ago. Anyway, I teach in the Learning, Design, and Technology program at the University of Houston in the College of Education. And my background is I have a bachelor's degree in media arts and a master's and a doctoral degree in instructional technology from the University of Virginia. And I've always been interested in photography and video and multimedia, and even before computers. And so when I came to the University of Houston, I found out I was looking for ways for people to be able to use things like digital cameras and microphones and still images and moving pictures, video clips, and put them into some kind of an educational format. And I found out that there were people in Wales and in the other places in the UK and in California in the US that were doing this thing called digital storytelling. I didn't know anything about it, but it turns out that we were actually doing some of those things without knowing that there was an organized group of people doing it and that there was even a name for it. So basically, I'm going to tell you about the different things, what digital storytelling is, the types of digital stories that are possible. We'll talk a little bit about the digital storytelling process, look at some educational materials and activities that my students and I have used to support the use of digital storytelling. I'll briefly cover some lessons that I've learned from teaching digital storytelling, and at the end I'll tell you about our massive open online course on digital storytelling that you can sign up for and get more information about how to get started with digital storytelling. So basically, what is digital storytelling? Well, it's combining regular storytelling with computer images, graphics, recorded audio narration, music, sometimes video clips, to tell a short story in a few minutes. And usually digital stories last anywhere from 2 to about 5 minutes, although my students tend to want them to be longer than that. And they revolve around a particular theme or point of view. So the elements of a digital story, if you Google elements of a digital story, you'll find a lot of people have talked about the 7 elements of a digital story. And Joe Lambert, who's the director of the Center for Digital Storytelling in the San Francisco, California area, who had been doing digital storytelling for a long time before I got interested in it, defined 7 elements, and I expanded on that. And I have the 10 elements of an educational digital story. So you can see here that that when you're either starting to create your own digital stories or getting your students involved in digital storytelling, then these are the things that you should keep in mind. And I do have a website that somebody mentioned on the chat, so thank you very much for that. It's called the Educational Uses of Digital Storytelling, and you can find, I'll show you the web address, but you can just Google digital storytelling or education and digital storytelling, and you'll find my website. And there's most of the information that I'm going to cover here is on our website. So I've been teaching digital storytelling courses for many years and conducting workshops and writing articles and book chapters and conducting research with some of my doctoral students on the effectiveness of digital storytelling. And we've all been looking at how digital storytelling can be used to support teaching and learning. So here's my website. It's digitalstorytelling.coe.uh.edu. That's College of Education at the University of Houston. But again, if you just will search for digital storytelling on Google or another search engine, then you'll be able to find my website. So let's talk about the different types of digital stories. I have written that there are basically 3 categories of digital stories. And the first is digital stories as personal narratives. And these can be stories about people or places or events in our lives, accomplishments, challenges, stories about where we live and what we do. And I mentioned Joe Lambert and the Center for Digital Storytelling in California. They started out doing these kinds of personal narrative digital stories and went out into communities and taught people in communities to create digital stories that could be shared online about their neighborhoods and their lives and the things that were important to them. And I mentioned that there was a group in Wales that and other areas of the UK that were doing early work in digital storytelling. There's somebody named Daniel Meadows, and he worked a lot in Wales. There was a project there called Capture Wales, and they went out into different neighborhoods in Wales and did the same thing as Joe Lambert and collected stories and trained people in how to create their own digital stories about where they lived and what they did. So I thought, well, this is a great avenue for education, so I started looking at the educational uses of these things, and I moved a little bit beyond just working with people in communities and neighborhoods. So for the sake of time, I'm not going to show any digital stories right now. You can go to my website and you can watch examples of personal narratives. There is a section on my website called Example Stories, and there's a category there called Personal Narratives, and you can watch these stories. And this is about growing up in Singapore and going through the educational system, which is somewhat harsh. And then I have a student who's a physician. He's a medical doctor from Indonesia, and he came to the United States on a Fulbright scholarship, and he did a terrific digital story about his Fulbright journey to get from Indonesia to the U.S. and what he found along the way and what he accomplished when he got here. So I invite you to take a look at these stories and others on our website. And I also have a section now on a single image digital story. So most of the digital stories that are on our website and that people create are made up of a series of still images and sometimes video clips that are all put together, and there's text, labels on the screen, and music playing in the background, and there are different effects like animations and transitions and things. And so they're short little 3, 4, 5 minute stories that talk about, like I said, someone's trip to the United States through a Fulbright scholarship, or going through the education system in Singapore, or a world of other possibilities. And the interesting thing about digital storytelling is that it can be used in just about any content area, and from art to zoology, from A to Z, as they say, and at any grade level. So I've worked with kindergarten teachers who teach digital storytelling as a classroom activity with 5- and 6-year-olds. And I've also taught elderly people to create digital stories. I worked with a gentleman who, when I met him, he was 85 years old, and I taught him how to create digital stories. And he just celebrated his 95th birthday last month, and I don't know if he's still creating digital stories, but he created a lot and he shared them with me. So it can be done by people of all ages and in all content areas. And going back to the single image digital story that is being displayed here on the screen right now, this is a picture that is a family photograph of mine. This is my father, and this is my grandfather. And my grandfather had a grocery store. My name is Bernard Robin, and this is my grandfather, Julius Robin, and he had a grocery store called Robin's Market and Grocery, and it was in Virginia, another state in the United States, which is where my father was born. And there's a calendar on the wall over here, and I wrote a script about what I could see from looking at this picture. And so, for example, my father and my grandfather are both no longer with us, and so I wasn't able to talk to them about this photograph. So, for example, I know that this was a guy who worked in my grandfather's grocery store, but I think his name was Wilson, but I don't know any other information about him. But I noticed that there's a calendar on the wall here, and I know that my father was a little boy, and so I was able to zoom in on the calendar and find out. I did some searching online for old calendars, and I found out that my father, the year was 1926, and my father was born in 1921, and so he was 5 years old in this picture. But I wrote this story, or the script for this story, about all the different things that you can see, like the different products on the walls behind my grandfather, behind and things on the counter, and things in front of the counter, and it turned out to be a really interesting digital story. It was short; it was about 2 minutes long, and I taught some of my students. In my digital storytelling course, created their own single image digital story from either a family photograph or some kind of interesting image that they found online or in a book or a magazine or a newspaper. So that's the first category, is this personal narrative. The second category of digital stories are stories that examine historical themes and events. And these are usually more than just a recounting of what can be found by doing some research in the library or online. So what I like to do is I like to have my students select a topic. Let's say that they were interested in the Second World War, and so they might talk to a friend or a relative who's old enough to remember what it was like to live through that war, or if they perhaps have a grandfather or an uncle who was a soldier in that war. Those can be interesting digital stories as well, but they also can have that personal narration component, the personal narrative component. So I think that digital storytelling is the most appealing and the most educationally valuable when it has that personal aspect to it. So for example, I have a student whose grandmother had a twin sister. They lived in Germany during World War II, and the twin sisters were rescued and smuggled out of Germany before the Germans, and some of you may know that the Germans during World War II, they were both Jewish, and they did a lot of, the student's grandmother and her twin sister were Jewish, and the Germans had done a lot of testing on twins, and not without very good outcomes, I'm afraid, for many of the twins. And so they were lucky to be smuggled out. And so she created a digital story about this children of the Holocaust who were able to be smuggled out of Germany and taken to other places in Europe where they were safe. And so that's a really interesting digital story, and it's called The Kinder Transport, The Unknown Children of the Holocaust. And that digital story is also on our website, and there's the link to it. But if you go there and you look under the category of history and personal narratives, I think it's listed twice, you can find it there. And then the third category of digital stories are those that inform or instruct and have content that's related to different topics that would come up in a classroom. So mathematics and science and language arts, medicine, all of those kinds of issues can be the basis for good digital stories. But again, I like the ones that have some personal aspect or some connection to students of today. So for example, in the medicine aspect, Houston has a very large medical center, and I teach them courses for healthcare professionals in the Texas Medical Center, which is in Houston. And some of my students are doctors or dentists or nurse educators, and I've taught them to create digital stories, and they have created some about what it's like to go through medical school or what it's like to be a nurse in a busy hospital. And again, they tell a story about some aspect of content. So for example, in the medicine area, I had one of my students who talked about a certain kind of heart defect that she saw in patients' children that were born with a heart defect. And she created the digital story as a way to explain to the parents what was wrong with their child and what kind of surgery was required to for treatment. And that turned out to be a really effective way for her to use digital storytelling that had a real positive outcome. So here's an example of a digital story that uses content area information, and this is for, on math. This is called In Search of the Pythagoreans, and it's all about the Pythagorean theorem, but instead of talking just about that, it goes into the history of who Pythagoras was and why he was important and what the theorem was, and then shows some real life examples that are related to things today. So it's also worth looking at. In summary, digital storytelling, I feel, can be an effective tool for educators, as I said, at all levels, because it's a way to introduce new content to students. It's a way to make content more understandable, and it also helps students integrate technology into the curriculum, or it helps teachers actually integrate technology in the curriculum, and it's also a good way to facilitate in-class discussions. It's also an effective, this says an effective tool for teachers, but I think this is also an effective tool for students because digital storytelling appeals to the different learning styles that students have. It generates interest among younger students in today's digital generation, students who grew up with computers and are very interested in being able to use technology to demonstrate content knowledge and skills, and it allows students to share their work with others, not just in the classroom, but if they're put online, then they can share them with a world audience. So this is really a powerful concept when you consider that digital storytelling can be used to help students improve what are called 21st century skills, and that's research and writing and organization, presentation and problem solving in order to create the digital story, and then assessment. We'll talk a little bit more about assessment a little later. The digital storytelling process is one that many people have put forward, and this one here was created by a lady named Samantha Mora, and it's similar to what I had been doing, but I like the way she laid it out. So and she has a little Creative Commons icon here, which means it's freely distributable. So it's nice when people do that and share their material with others, which I try to do. But anyway, you can see that in step one, you have to come up with the idea for your digital story. In step two, you conduct some research on that topic. In step three, you write a script. In step four, you create a plan and put together usually a storyboard to lay out your ideas before you actually put the story together. In step five, you gather or create images, you gather or create audio, and you gather or create video clips. And I had mentioned early on that I was interested in digital photography for a long time, and so I actually teach another course on digital photography where I teach students the best way to create digital images of their own so there's no copyright issues, and then the final outcome can be a digital story that students create based on the photographs they took, and we try to work it around a particular theme or idea, so it's not just a portrait gallery or a series of images, their favorite photos, but they're taken on a particular theme. And step six, you put it all together using computers and software. And in step seven, you share it online usually. And in step eight, you reflect on and either get feedback from others so that you can improve the next version of your story. I tell myself sometimes that that I'm never satisfied with a digital story, and I could keep working on it and making improvements, forever. But at some point, you need to stop and move on to something else. But I usually do more than one version of a story. Once I get it the way I want it, I always think of one more thing to do. We'll talk about assessment and feedback in a little bit, and you'll maybe get a better idea about it there. So the way I do it in a class or a workshop is I have students select a topic for their story, and I either approve it or I give them an approved list of topics, and then they write the first version of a script for the digital story that they will narrate, and then I give them feedback, and other students in the class or the workshop give them feedback. And sometimes we just sit around a table and we conduct what's called the story circle, where everybody talks about their ideas or reads the first version of their script and gets feedback from other people in their group, and that's very helpful. So there's information about story circles and how to do that in a classroom or even online on my website. So that's an important aspect, I think, that helps improve students' writing and also their ideas for how to make their stories as good as possible. Anyway, there's a lot more about the digital storytelling process, but I know I'm running over probably because we got started late, so I'm going to speed up and just go to some of the other information and just mention that the digital storytelling process as we use it is iterative, which means there's constant feedback and then time for improvement. So digital storytelling basically is not something that can be done in 1 or 2 days when there are new people involved for the first time in digital storytelling. So it's a better idea to try to allot more time if that's possible, so that the people can have a chance to work through the feedback and then be able to make improvements as they go along. So let's skip down to some of the tools that are available. So in the past, we used some desktop computer software. Microsoft Photo Story 3 for Windows was a good program, but it's not supported by Microsoft anymore. They gave it away for free, but they have different versions of Movie Maker. I think Movie Maker Live, if you're on a Windows computer, is very popular nowadays, and that's good for Windows users. iMovie, if you have, I'm not sure how popular Macintosh computers are in Europe now, so if you have them, iMovie is a good program for digital storytelling, and Adobe makes a program called Photoshop Elements, which can be used for digital storytelling, but it's not my favorite choice. They also have a video editor called Premiere Elements, and that's maybe even a better option. But again, I have a whole section on my website on digital storytelling, and the tool that we like the best right now is a web-based video editing program called WeVideo, and it looks a lot like iMovie or Windows Movie Maker, and it's not totally free. There is a free version, but it's low quality and it doesn't give you enough storage space online or enough time to do the work. So, but they do have education pricing available, and it's pretty affordable, and it's a really great tool because students who have technology available to them in their classroom can work on things, and they can then work on digital stories, and then they could, if they have a computer or access to a computer at home or online, at home or at another location, like an afternoon clubhouse or relative's house or a library, they can log on and continue working on their WeVideo project on any computer, since it's all web-based. And so it's not tied to one particular computer. As long as they have any computer that has a web browser and internet access, they'll be able to log on to WeVideo. Mobile-based tools are pretty popular now as well, and depending on whether many students have smartphones or they have tablets like iPhones and Android phones and iPads and other tablets. There are all kinds of tools that are available. It's very easy to create a digital story completely from a smartphone or tablet now because those devices have an audio recorder built in or one that can be downloaded for free. They have a still camera, they have video cameras, they have software that you can download. Either there's some free ones and there are some that are relatively inexpensive. And so everything can be put together on the mobile device and then uploaded to a web site and then shared that way. So that's something that that we're going to be seeing more of, I'm sure, in the future. But already you notice it says iMovie for iPad here, and that's a typical computer software program that's now been developed for the mobile platform as well. And so those are, again, things that I think we're going to see more and more of. The other thing that I wanted to mention is that when we do digital storytelling, we don't just do it just for the digital stories themselves. We create projects and products that have digital stories embedded in them. And let me just show you some examples. So one of my students in a past digital storytelling course was a high school science research teacher. She was teaching science research to 15 and 16, 17-year-olds, and they created a whole series of digital stories about the scientific method. So she created lesson plans about science as a body of knowledge, and science as a way of investigating, and science as a way of thinking, and science's interaction with technology and society. And she created some assessments that she put up online. And I have examples of these, again, on my website, and you can follow these links to see examples of the stories and the different materials that she put together. And we have lots of those kinds of projects on our website as well. So I said we would mention assessment and evaluation briefly. Let me just mention that the way we encourage educators to think about assessing the effectiveness of digital storytelling by their students is to use a multi-layered approach where we look at the digital story creator. That would be usually the student who created the digital story, the creator's peers, that would be other students in the classroom, and then the instructor herself or himself. In the past, we used what are called grading rubrics, traditional rubrics, where students would get a series of points based on how they followed each point in each component of the process. And we still use that sometimes, and a lot of other people have done that as well. And I mentioned story circles where students sit around and discuss their scripts and ideas, and so we've had rubrics for that as well. Well, we had something that just didn't show up there. I apologize for that. But we've moved away from using these rubrics as much now as doing this multi-step assessment procedure where we look at different components of the digital storytelling process at different stages of the process. So the way I like to recommend to people, educators who want to use digital storytelling in their classroom, is to try to do it over a several week period if possible and evaluate students during the design phase, and then that's when they come up with their ideas and topics and do the story circles where they get feedback on the first version of their script. And then during the development process, when they're collecting the graphics and recording the audio narration, and then after the project, the digital storytelling project or the digital story is completed. And so rubrics can be a part of that, but as well as other assessment methods, reflective paper, and is also a good way to get students to reflect on what they learned and how they think the project helped them in their studies. So I have used a series of questions that I give to my students to explain what was the topic of their story and why did they choose it and what technology did they use and where did the content come from, and what were some of the challenges they faced, and then we also have them create supplemental educational materials or support materials to go along with their digital stories. So I mentioned the science teacher who created lesson plans for the classroom to supplement or support the digital stories that were used. It was actually more the other way around. The digital stories supplemented the instructional materials that she created. So either way you want to look at it, it's not creating a digital story in a vacuum just for the sake of creating a story, but doing it as part of an educational process that helps students learn. And that's, again, goes back to the title of this presentation, which is how digital storytelling can be used to support teaching and learning. So I also asked students to tell me what were some of the most important things that they learned from creating digital story projects, and also whether they thought this was a technology tool that they would use in the future. And so I have a couple of slides here where students shared what they thought the most significant things I learned revolved around the concept of digital storytelling, not just as a hobby. My university is currently exploring ways to generate high-impact learning experiences for students, and digital storytelling offers a way for me to learn more about 21st century literacy and skills versus more traditional teaching strategies. This was invaluable for a first-year tenure-track faculty member, so I had somebody who was in my class who was a first-year college teacher. And there are other I have articles about assessment and reflection that you can find on my website as well to get more about that. I also mentioned that I have doctoral students who have conducted research studies on the effectiveness of digital storytelling, and there's a whole section on the website about research in digital storytelling. So there's a lot of interesting. In 2011, one of my students from Turkey did a worldwide survey on digital storytelling, and the results are on my website as well. I'm going to skip down to, that worldwide survey was to determine how educators, students, and others around the world are using digital storytelling to support education and describe different perceptions from people in different cultures about digital storytelling. And we had people from all over US, Canada, Korea, Finland, the Netherlands, Egypt, Ireland, and I think it's probably time now to repeat that study, so we may be doing it again, and it may be coming your way. Briefly, let me just run through some lessons that I've learned from teaching students about digital storytelling, and I have an article called Lessons from the Trenches, What Educators Should Know About Teaching Digital Storytelling, and you can read that, it's online. But I'm not going to go through all of these, but I'll just say that after many years of doing this, if you're interested in putting digital storytelling together in your classroom and exposing your students to it, then these are some of the things I would suggest that you look at because it would save you some time. These are things that I've learned over many years and sometimes painfully so. And there are, I think, 20 of them. I only have 12 here. I've done a couple of different versions of this lessons learned, so I think there's 12 in one area and 20 in another. In any event, some of you may have already taken or know a lot about MOOCs, the massive open online courses, and these are online courses that are open to anyone in the world. The open part is a little less open now than it used to be because the companies that are making these courses available to people have found out that they're not going to stay in business very long if they give away all of the content for free. So now we say that they're open, but because they're open to anyone who wants to participate, but they're not totally free. So, for example, I think that the digital storytelling course that we offer is $49 in US currency. It's not a lot of money, but the research has also shown that people who pay a little bit for something tend to stick with it and do a little bit more to complete these courses than those that do it totally for free. In any event, our digital storytelling massive open online course, or MOOC, is on demand, so it's available at any time, and it's 5 weeks long. And in week 1 you learn about selecting a topic, and in week 2 you put together the storyboard, and in week 3 you gather all the materials, and in week 4 you put them all together, and in week 5 you reflect on, you share your story with other students and reflect on, again, those things, what you learned and what challenges you were interested in. And here's the link to our, again, you could just do a Google search on digital storytelling MOOC. These are offered through a MOOC provider called Coursera, and they also have a list of lots and lots of other courses that are available on their platform. But if you're not interested in going through the more formal MOOC course, I've taken all of the instructional video tutorials that I've created for that, and I've put them on a YouTube channel. So here's the link to my YouTube channel, and you can see here it says Digital Story MOOC Week 1, choosing a topic and defining your purpose, and all of the tutorials that I use in the course are available for free on the YouTube channel. Week 2, writing an effective script and creating a storyboard, and all of those tutorials are there. Week 3, working with audio, and then if you scroll down on that page, you'll get to week 4 and week 5. We had an international student design team for our digital storytelling MOOC. I mentioned my student Erwin, who came as a Fulbright scholar from Indonesia. Arthur was from the Philippines, Rashmi was from India, Trang was from Vietnam, and Abel was from Kenya, and they helped another faculty, and Dr. Sarah McNeil and me put together our MOOCs, and the digital storytelling was the first one. And the first time we offered it, we got 27,000 people to sign up from 182 countries, and you can see that 28% of them came from Europe, 34% came from the US, 23% from Asia, South America, Africa, Oceania. Were all represented, so it was quite an interesting thing. We only had about 500 or so who actually completed all of the requirements for the course, so the completion rate is way down. But nowadays, when we offer it, we have about, at any one time, we have between 4,000 and 6,000 students from many different countries participating in our online course. And like I said, it's available on demand, which means it's always going on. You don't have to wait for us to offer it. You may have to wait 2 or 3 weeks for it to start over again so that you can begin at the beginning, but you won't ever have to wait too long. And I have, in this presentation that I've shared with you, I have 2 example stories from students, participants in our digital storytelling MOOC. And this one is about chemistry and everyday life, and this one is about the meaning of life, by one of our students who shared some really powerful thoughts about life and death. So again, I apologize for running late to get started. Here's the website, my digital storytelling website, that I invite you to visit. Here's my email address. I'd be happy if you want to email me and share any ideas you have. I think, yeah, I put this in at the end. Wasn't sure if we'd have time for it or not. These are some of the other projects that we've created about digital storytelling, and apparently not everything came through, but this is more information about those lessons learned. Anyway, if you're interested, email me and I'll send you or make available online a version of the slides that you can download, and I'll make sure that all the content is there. So anyway, thank you very much for your patience, and I think next time I'm gonna log on two different computers simultaneously, and then if one of them doesn't work, I'll just switch over to the other one. So I hope that digital storytelling is something that you, if you haven't already delved into, that you'll feel like it would be helpful to give it a try. And again, you can find lots of resources and example stories on my website. And please contact me if there's anything that I can do to help you as you get started. All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Bernard. I don't know if there are any questions. And if you have some time to see if there are any questions there.
Okay.
I just had one. If you can suggest some digital storytelling tools that teachers can use. It was one question.
It depends on whether they're using Windows computer, a desktop or a laptop computer, a Macintosh computer, or a mobile device like an iPhone or an Android phone or a tablet computer. So I think the best thing to do would be to go to my website and look under the, there's a separate section on software, and I have listed a number of different software programs. Again, WeVideo is one that I like very much, and but I would say that if you're on a budget and you don't want to spend any money at all, just look at what's already installed on your computer or what apps are available for free, because there are several. So if you're on a Windows computer, then Windows Movie Maker Live, I think, is the name of the latest version. That's a good tool for creating digital stories. There's an audio editing and recording program I like very much called Audacity, and it's also listed on my website. And I see that somebody chatted or wrote in the chat window something about, can you suggest a tool that you can use for your own characters and not the figures it suggests? Use your own characters and not the figures. I'm not sure I understand that. Maybe someone could explain that to me a little better so I can try to respond to that. But there are, the other thing you can do is just Google digital storytelling tools or digital storytelling free tools, and you'll see that there are lots of things that you can try. Adobe, which has lots of popular software like Photoshop and other things, Acrobat, has just come out with a tool called Spark, S-P-A-R-K. So Adobe Spark is one that I'm going to add to my website, and it looks to be a really fun tool. I think that digital storytelling can be fun, and it should be. And people really, especially younger people, respond very well to being able to create things on the computer or on their mobile device and sharing it with their peers. And that aspect, that social aspect of sharing things with your peers, I think is a great incentive for students to do better work, because sometimes if they think only the teacher is looking, they're going to do an okay job, but not a great job. But if they think their friends are going to be looking at them, then they don't want to look like they don't know what they're doing in front of their friends. So anyway, I think that digital storytelling is a very powerful tool. And I think also there, I don't remember, I haven't put it up on my website yet, but I just released my latest article on digital storytelling. I sent a copy to, or the link to it, to Irene, and maybe she can share that with you, but I'll also put it up on my website because it kind of presents an overview of much of what I've talked about today. Okay, well, thank you very much, and I'll stay on for a few more minutes, and you can let me know if you have any other questions or comments.
I think you gave them, too many links and too many, resources that they will need some time, to read.
Just to work, yes.
So I'm sure they will find many interesting things in your website for sure. I have visited it many times, and I got some ideas from there.
Great.
So I don't know which tool is more flexible. Athena is asking. I don't know if,
well, I think
yeah.
again, the reason I like WeVideo is because it is web-based. So I would look for web-based tools. And that's because in the US, we have students, some of them have Windows computers and some of them have Macintosh computers or Apple computers. So, and the software is not always compatible. So some software like Windows Movie Maker, there's no equivalent, there's no version of that software for the Macintosh. So they have their own called iMovie, and they work differently. So I don't want to have to teach two different programs and say, if you're using this kind of computer, do this, follow these instructions. But if you're using a different kind of computer, follow these instructions. So with WeVideo, it works the same way regardless of what kind of computer you're on, because it goes through a web interface. It's much like this Adobe Connect that we're using right now. I couldn't get it to work on my Windows computer, so I finally ended up doing it on my Macintosh. And the reason I could do that is because it's web-based and it works the same way on both platforms. It actually seems to work better on the Mac today than than it did on the Windows side. But anyway, that's why I think in terms of flexibility, for me at least, WeVideo is the most versatile program.
That's great. So thank you very much once again, and thank you, for all the effort in order to work out, the webinar.
Yes, I apologize. If we do this again, I'll be sure to set it up well in advance to make sure that it's working. But thank you to everyone who stuck with it, and good luck with your digital storytelling efforts.
Thank you, Bernardo. Don't worry, we are used to technology, and we know that with technology there are always some issues, so we are really okay with that.
Okay, well, thank you for your understanding.
Thank you very much.
Okay, bye-bye, everybody.